Welcome, and bienvenidos to Tech and Tequila, the podcast where cutting-edge technology meets smooth conversation, just like your favorite adult beverage. I'm your host, Kat Lopez-Shelby, founder and CEO of Shelby Technology Solutions. Basically, I'm your techie chica. I'm ready to guide you through the latest in tech innovation, industry insights, and behind-the-scenes stories from the digital world. Each week, we'll explore a fascinating intersection of technology and business, all while enjoying a smooth glass of your favorite tequila or your favorite adult beverage. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of technology with a twist of lime and a splash of knowledge. Cheers to another episode of Tech and Tequila. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Tech and Tequila. I am so excited today. Last week, we were blessed to talk with Miss Kelly and go over some of the amazing things that Five9 has to offer in the contact center space. We went over ways to improve your customer experience, some great things where they're doing with AI, and just took advantage of her vast amount of knowledge in the area, as well as learned about the amazing group that she started called Exposure that is all about culture and community. So if you haven't listened, make sure you check that out. Well, today is going to be a little different because I like to say we're going back to basics, but I'm not sure for everybody this is basic. Today, I wanted to cover some trends that are going on in cybersecurity, some philosophies that lots of people have in cybersecurity, and then I'm going to hit kind of the importance of assessments. I'm also going to hit some of the foundations that you need to have in place in order to have different types of cybersecurity insurance. And then, of course, a quick freebie, which is just 10 things that if you put in place will help your cybersecurity posture. So let's get started. So first and foremost, I want to talk about kind of what's going on. So as we go into cybersecurity and we look at the road ahead, you want to think about the fact that by 2026, most organizations are prioritizing their security investments based on the continuous threat exposure that they have, not only within like the company itself, but any of the third-party breaches that have been happening. Because the goal always is let's make the exposure less, let's reduce the breaches. And of course, we would be remiss not to talk about the fact that, generative AI is going to cause a spike in cybersecurity resources to secure it. And also, it's going to help with some incremental spend that's going to happen in that section. Another thing is by 2024, lots of organizations are going to adopt a cybersecurity mesh architecture that will reduce the financial impact of security incidents, hopefully by 90%. So let's talk about some cybersecurity headlines. And by headlines, let's talk about a couple of breaches that have happened recently and how they happened if we know, and just the nature of them happening in general. So we're going to go back in time first off to talk about the MGM Resorts breach. And we know that happened by social engineering. So anytime someone talks about social engineering, if you've never heard of that or you're kind of like, what are they talking about? Basically, somebody went on, pretended to be someone else, or went in order to be like, hey, I need this password reset. I need this done, get it done ASAP and take care of it. And so it's just a matter of trial and error and keep trying and keep erring. Another one obviously is AT&T. That has not played out enough yet to really understand how exactly it happened. But what I like to tell people is the importance of that is to think about how many clients were impacted. So you're looking at 73 million people were impacted or customers, and that's present and past. And so when you think about that, that's either 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 of the adults in the United States. So just think about that big impact. Of course, we have 23andMe, which once they kind of negated how that exactly transpired, it was from recycled login credentials. And I've kind of talked about that before, where I interacted with a client that when their MSP or the company setting up their emails was setting it up exactly the same way every single time and not requiring people to change their passwords. And of course, we would be remiss if we don't talk about Change Healthcare. Now, we do know the base of that is ransomware. They haven't released a lot of information. And surprisingly, so far, I think that I can be very open. They've gotten a bit of a slap on the wrist about this, like, don't do it again. But, obviously that affected so many people. So we would be remiss if we don't talk about, and we say so many people, so many businesses, so many patients. I think the last estimate, oh my goodness, I can't even tell you because it changes every time I look at it. But those are a couple of kind of the big guys that we've heard about and affected. One of the other things that is on the trend right now, and we know that I like to say every day, but when you're reading through, you have this advancement and growing of generative AI. And I actually, in the Permian Basin, just saw where BAM Biz Hub and the Midland Hispanic Chamber of Commerce had this entire thing about using generative AI to help, work smarter, not harder, which is great. But generative AI also means that it's going to increase bad actors being able to do stuff. But it also opens up additional cyber risks. So these are things you want to think about. Just for an example, ChatGPT is the fastest growing app of all time. So it had 100 million users in 2 months versus it took Instagram 2 years to do that. Obviously, like I just said, the advancement is growing every 6 to 10 months. To give an idea of how important this is to companies, Microsoft has committed $20 billion, that's billion, into research and development. So some of the pros of it is efficiency, in-depth analysis, and proactive threat detection can all be aided with AI. The cons is some of it's resource intensive, and of course malicious code generation can be faster. And I was at a training a couple weeks ago, and they talked about something that used to take 90 hours is now condensed into 4 with generative AI. So just give an idea of a bad actor and how quickly they can use that. Obviously we would be remiss, since Change Healthcare, as everything has been said up until today, so it's April 23rd of 2024, it was caused by a ransomware. So ransomware attacks are up 95% year over year. The latest strains of these are delivering faster encryption across larger data sets. And of course, there are multiple variants utilized in a single attack. State and language-based automated behaviors. AI is changing the game. There's that term again, AI, it's everywhere. You can't get away from it. And of course, double extortion, which is exposure of not only your business information, but your personal information. And I don't say this and go through these texts and trends to create FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I talk about these because these are things you're going to hear on the news. You're going to see when you see people posting, you're going to see blog posts. And really what I like to talk to my clients about is, number one is having a plan. So we need to figure out where you're at and figure out where you need to go. And you cannot take your head and ostrich yourself and stick it in the sand and pretend like I'm never going to be affected. I have someone that I network with, and he's always famous for telling me it is not that Joe's Pizzeria down the way has not had an incident. It's Joe's Pizzeria does not have a requirement to inform people. And so when you hear about big attacks like AT&T, you're like, oh, but these are the big guys. Yes. But one of the things is the big guys, yes, they have attack. And I know it said with Change Healthcare, they paid the ransom, but little guys pay ransom too. And in a previous, and I'm not sure if it was on a podcast or a TikTok that I did, I talked about the fact that once you pay them, number one, you're paying them. Number two, your information is out there existing on the dark web somewhere. So if that is a decision you make, that's the decision that you made. But keep in mind that now they have your information. Now they know you're going to pay. So there always is going to be someone who tries it again with that right there. So I always say that the base way to start is to do a cybersecurity assessment or a checkup, depending on how you want to go. And these go just like anything, like a car. You've got everything from your Hyundai all into your Rolls Royce and everything in between. So don't get overwhelmed and thinking, okay, here I am. I've got this small to medium sized business. I just can't afford this. I can't put this in my tech stack. I can't. Number one, let's not do that. If you're using a visual example of when people stick their head in the sand and don't move forward with anything, is think about the most recent episode of Young Sheldon. I don't know if you've seen it, but the septic tank went out in the house. And because at this time they can't fix it, the idea by George Sr. is to get a porta potty. So nobody wants to have a porta potty at their business. Nobody wants to have a porta potty at their house. So I say instead take a proactive approach, which means something's going on with your septic tank, because generally you saw signs before this exactly transpired. Do your due diligence, go out there, talk to 3 separate different, I'm going to say plumbers, get quotes and start the process. Because if you start the process and you take action, you can start making a plan, and a plan of action is better. I kind of debated on whether to talk about and walk through some of the requirements of a cybersecurity insurance that I personally know of, or to go through 10 quick tips. So if you don't want to hear about cybersecurity insurance, pass through this to the very end, and I'm just going to give you 10 quick tips that will help improve your cybersecurity posture. But a lot of the questions that I get asked by my tips. So if you don't want to hear about cybersecurity insurance, pass through this to the very end, and I'm just going to give you 10 quick tips that will help improve your cybersecurity posture. But a lot of the questions that I get asked by my clients are about, is the right term, is what are the reporting requirements? And for a majority of policies that cover any type of cyber event is for you to notify them within 24 hours. And the secondary thing is that they're going to have requirements for you to have certain things in place in order to qualify that, okay, you've got these things in place. Okay, this has been done. I'm going to give you a little secret. The patching and the updates and all of that magic has been done. I say magic, but it's something that you should make sure that you're doing on a regular basis. You're doing your patches, you're updating your software whenever it asks, including your iPhone. So I'm going to walk you through a program that I know of. This is specific. So what I'm going to do here is walk through some of the requirements that a particular cybersecurity insurance policy that I helped one of my clients get. Now, I am not going to put out, let's say, the name brand software, but I'm going to talk about what the requirements were for them to get this. And going back to what I just said previously, is the fact that they are required, once they know something has happened, is to notify them within 24 hours so that the policy does pay. This particular insurance requires multi-factor authentication required on all company email and any software that you can add it onto. If the company accepts credit card payments, the company has to be PCI compliant. If the company is subject to HIPAA regulations, the company has to be HIPAA compliant. That you personally, your IT staff, or your MSP has updated all systems within 60 days of the manufacturer's release cycle for high credibility patches. They require that all outgoing payments or funds transferred to be subject to segregation of duties between initiation and authorization, such that no one individual can control the entire process. They require all outgoing payments or fund transfers to be subject to dual authorization by at least one supervisor after being initiated by a third employee. They will confirm all changes to vendor supplier details, including routing numbers, account numbers, telephone numbers, and contact information by a direct call using only the contract number previously provided by the vendor supplier before the request was received. That's just something that you sign off on when you go in to say, hey, this is what I want. The other thing is they require you to have some type of dark web monitoring in place that checks for a combination of human and artificial intelligence. It scours botnets, criminal chat rooms, blogs, websites, bulletin boards, peer-to-peer networks, foreign private networks, other black market sites, 24/7, 365 days a year to identify stolen credentials and personal information. It also requires that you do have ongoing security awareness training and phishing simulations to educate your employees about the best cybersecurity practices. And just for the record, they require you do it quarterly. The other thing is they do require to have a security for your Google Workspace or email, Google email, your Microsoft 365 against phishing and social engineering attacks. They require a managed SOC, detecting malicious activity across endpoints, network, cloud attack pillars, and includes built-in apps so that you can enable, basically, you don't want shadow IT. That's what it's talking about. The other thing is they want you to have some type of EDR that detects suspicious behaviors and threats, and it evades the defenses so you can quickly respond before significant damage is done. So why do I say, and why do I go over all of this? Because these are the things that are required for you, number one, to have cybersecurity insurance, and number two, for your insurance to pay out. Because ultimately, you're paying monthly for this insurance, and I have seen all kinds of payments. But like most recently, I know two of the ones that we deal with, I've seen everything from like $300 to $500 to $800 a month and on up. But that was really quick. So if you didn't want to hear about that, we're now going to start the portion where I basically say, here are things you can do yourself to improve your cybersecurity posture. And I always start with the most important, and that is because 88% of breaches, cyber attack situations happen because of human error. So first and foremost, train your employees, because what is between the computer and the floor is, number one, your first line of defense. Number two, you want to set up multi-factor authentication, and you want to have strong passwords. So anything someone can go look at your social media, or is your name, your social, your date of birth, your anniversary, get them all out there. Don't use it. Number three, regular software updates and patching are extremely important. Have in place network security. So what does that mean? That means firewall, intrusion detection systems, secure Wi-Fi networks, and protect your network from anybody accessing it that's not supposed to. And that's why I say, so use this as an example. With most ISPs out there, if you have a Wi-Fi and you say, hey, when people are here, I want them to be able to use it, make sure you set up a public section versus your private section, because you don't want to be giving your password out to your Wi-Fi to every Tom, Joe, and Gina, so to speak. The other thing is data backup and recovery. Make sure that you are regularly checking any of your backups to ensure that, number one, that they're successful, that they're stored correctly, that they're easily accessible in case of an attack or a data loss. I think the next two go without saying, but I will say them anyways. Secure cloud storage. If you use cloud services, ensure that it is stored in a cloud that is encrypted and has access controls in place to protect against unauthorized access. Secure mobile devices. I mean, with everything your phone can do, because it's like having a little mini computer in your hand these days, implement security measures for mobile devices. Encryption, MFA, remote wipe capabilities. This will protect you against data breaches, especially if one of these devices is lost or stolen. And that goes for any mobile device. So, I would say laptop being a mobile device, but something you utilize in a co-working hybrid environment, so to speak, or hybrid working environment, your cell phone, your tablets, any of those. Have an incident response plan. And this is a twofold, because number one, it's not good enough just to have a plan. People need to know what they're supposed to do, and you need to test it. Make sure that it's effective and that it can be used and somebody knows what to do, whether it is Monday morning at 7:30 or if we are talking Saturday at 5 p.m., there's somebody that can do it. regular security audits and assessments. I can't say this enough. There's lots of regulation and requirements. And it goes back to what I talk about. If you have an existing MSP or you have a wonderful IT staff, that's all great. But you want to have a third party come in and assess what you're doing to find any holes that may be there. And if you have this third party come in, I always say, hey, in 6 months, if you're like, we fixed this, now we want to go through, make sure that what you said was fixed is fixed. And then look to see if there's anything else. Things change overnight. And of course, last but not least, look at getting cyber insurance to help mitigate the financial impact of a cyber attack or a data breach. So that's kind of the short and sweet of it. I started out telling you about some trends, some things that are going on. You might hear in the news, you might see. I went over some of the requirements for a particular cybersecurity insurance policy that we helped one of our clients get. And then very quickly, I covered 10 things that you can do to help improve your cybersecurity posture. As always, thank you for joining us on Tech and Tequila. I would be remiss without saying that you cannot stick your head in the sand like an ostrich, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. And the one thing that I always talk to my clients about, and if you didn't get anything else, you get this from today, is that look at where you're at, make a plan, and then just start working it. Because if you don't plan, you plan to fail. So, all right. Thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you next time. I'm super excited because next time I have a wonderful guest on here that's going to talk about some amazing things for your business. Thank you.
Today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech, and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.